3, 2, 5, 1, 4, 3, 2, 1.
He was the prodigy of tennis. At 17, he conquered Wimbledon. He won everything. A great career, millions of dollars, worldwide fame. And yet, he ended up behind bars. How did Boris Becker, the tennis legend, fall so low? Was it just a case of bad choices or an inevitable downfall? Boris Becker, a name that resonates like a legend. At just 17, he was already at the top of the tennis world, becoming the youngest winner of Wimbledon in history, a child prodigy. His aggressive play, charisma, and passionate temperament quickly made him a global icon. Everything seemed destined for him. Titles, sponsors, fame. He had it all. But paradoxically, alongside glory, there were already cracks, and in the end, the question arises, how does a champion who reached such heights fall so low? In this video, we will revisit the fascinating yet tragic story of Boris Becker, his meteoric rise, his genius status in tennis, and the dizzying fall that followed. We will trace this contrasting story that intertwines glory and decline, success and failure. Becker didn't just lose matches, he lost his empire, his career, and his name. But how can a champion, a man at the pinnacle of glory, end up behind bars? The fall of a legend. Doesn't it signify another reality of high-level sports? Is it truly just a bad choice, or the logical consequence of a system that doesn't prepare its stars for managing their legacy, their money, and their future? From child prodigy to the dark depths of prison, Becker embodies the hidden downfall of high-level sports. What lies behind trophies, fame, and luxury. For behind the legend, there is a man caught up in his mistakes, and this fall, as brutal as it is instructive. So we will dissect this story, not to judge during the Serb's great years. One might have thought Becker was safe, but no. And more importantly, who really hides behind champion Becker? We are in July 1985. On the sacred courts of Wimbledon, a 17-year-old German teenager is about to enter history. Boris Franz Becker, with his fiery red hair and determined gaze, is about to achieve the unthinkable. But first, let me set the scene. In 1985, Wimbledon is the temple of tennis. Traditions are sacred. All in white, immaculate grass, religious silence. And here comes this German kid with his revolutionary style who will shake everything up. Boris isn't even a seed. He's ranked 20th in the world. At the time, there were only 16 seeded players. So with no pressure, Boris arrives with just the desire to do well. No one is really expecting him. But from his first match, we understand something is happening. Boris doesn't play like the others. Where players of the time stay at the back and exchange patiently, he rushes to the net like a kamikaze, and especially, he performs incredible dives that will become his signature. Imagine the scene. Facing him in the final is American Kevin Curran, an experienced and formidable server. Curran is very solid. He just eliminated John McEnroe and Jimmy Connors, two tennis legends. But Boris fears nothing. The match begins, and very quickly we see he has that magical thing all champions possess. He raises his level in crucial moments. The more the pressure mounts, the more dangerous he becomes. Every crucial point, he plays as if his life depends on it. Due to his power and devastating serve, he is quickly nicknamed Boom Boom. Then there's that mythical moment in the second set. Boris is trailing. Curran seems in control. Suddenly, on a break point, Boris literally dives to retrieve an impossible passing shot. He lands on his stomach, gets up, and sends a winning forehand into the corner. Wimbledon had never seen anything like it. The usually phlegmatic audience explodes. On July 7, 1985, at 17 years and 227 days old, Boris Becker lifts his first Wimbledon trophy. The images go around the world. This kid crying tears of joy, not yet realizing what is happening. He becomes the youngest male champion in the history of the tournament. And this victory is not just a sporting achievement. It's a true cultural earthquake. Overnight, Boris becomes a global superstar. In West Germany, it is madness. The Becker mania sweeps the country. Germany had never had a hero in tennis of this caliber. Airports are paralyzed when Boris returns to the country. Thousands of fans are waiting for him. Journalists fight to interview him. Chancellor Helmut Kohl personally receives him. So in just a few days, Boris goes from a promising player to a national idol. But what fascinates the public most is his personality. Unlike traditional tennis players, often reserved and measured, Boris exudes raw energy, a rare emotional intensity. He cries with joy, he cries with frustration, he literally battles against himself on the court. So Becker humanizes a sport sometimes seen as elitist and cold, and the media loves that. Boris doesn't just play tennis, he offers a total spectacle. His interviews are spontaneous, authentic moments of television without filter. When he wins, he shines. When he loses, he doesn't hide his disappointment, and this emotional transparency captivates millions of fans around the world. His physique also plays a crucial role in his success. At 17, Boris is already 1.90 meters tall and weighs 85 kilograms. Fiery red hair, square jaw, piercing gaze. Boris Becker has all the makings of a romantic hero. This period is also the time of mythical rivalries that have marked the history of tennis. And when I say mythical, I mean it. Facing Ivan Lendl first, Lendl is the opposite of Boris. Methodical, where Boris is instinctive. Cold, where Boris is fiery. Calculating, where Boris charges headlong. Their duel was an open-air psychology class. Lendl's calm against Boris's rage. Boris pushes Lendl to his limits. And then there's Stefan Edberg, the elegant Swede, the other contrast. Their match was a ballet, Nordic grace against German power. The audience was always torn between admiration for Edberg's beautiful game and fascination for Boris's intensity. Their final at Wimbledon in '88 remains memorable. Edberg wins, but Boris puts up a strong fight. In the end, both men collapse from exhaustion. They just gave us nearly 4 hours of pure tennis. And finally, there's Pete Sampras, who will dominate the '90s. Against Sampras, Boris gives everything he has, but we can already sense the times are changing.
Parallel to his sporting successes, Boris rakes in crazy sums for the time. Tens of millions of dollars in career earnings, plus pharaonic endorsement contracts. Several million a year just with Puma, representing more than what some current top 20 players earn. And the real big bucks Boris makes with sponsors. He has his own line of rackets, Nutella makes him the face of their German campaigns, and even car brands scramble for his image. Boris becomes one of the highest-paid athletes in the world, across all sports. With this money, Boris lives like a prince, luxury villas in Monaco, London, and Mallorca, a collection of sports cars, private jet travel around the world. He spends without counting, convinced that this well will never run dry. And then there are investments. Boris dives into everything: restaurants in London, real estate projects in Germany and Monaco, starts an airline, and even nightclubs. He diversifies and builds what he thinks is financial security. On paper, everything seems perfect, and the irony is that Boris earns so much money that he doesn't really know how much he has. He trusts his financial advisors, signs contracts without always reading them thoroughly, and this carelessness regarding money will later cost him dearly. But by the mid-90s, things start to subtly go wrong. Sportingly, first, Boris loses consistency. He still wins tournaments, but early losses begin to multiply. His ultra-aggressive game, which was his strength, begins to show its limits against more complete, more patient players. Tennis evolves, and the new generation, embodied by Sampras and Agassi, brings an athletic dimension that Boris struggles to keep up with. Training becomes more scientific, physical preparation more intense, and Boris, used to playing on instinct, finds it hard to adapt. Physically, it also becomes complicated. To be fair, 15 years of spectacular diving take their toll. Injuries accumulate: back, wrist, ankle. Boris starts playing through pain, and it shows in his results. He needs more and more time to recover between tournaments, and then his private life begins to spiral out of control. German media start to unleash on his nightlife antics and extramarital affairs. The national hero starts to crumble. This constant media pressure weighs on Boris psychologically. But the worst part is that Boris doesn't see the danger coming. Blinded by his past success, He continues to live as if nothing could touch him. And this arrogance, this feeling of being untouchable, will be his downfall because at this moment, he doesn't yet know that real problems are just beginning. Let's now talk about an exciting episode in Boris's post-sporting career. His role as Novak Djokovic's coach between 2014 and 2016. It's a crazy bet at the time. Djokovic, already world number 1, decides to call on Boris to take his career to the next level. Why Boris? Because Novak sees in him a legend who has already experienced the pressure of the biggest tournaments. A champion who knows the mindset needed to win the most important matches against the best. Throughout their collaboration, Boris brings Djokovic that mental dimension he sometimes lacks in crucial moments. And their partnership becomes a resounding success. With Boris in his team, Djokovic wins 6 Grand Slams and notably has an extraordinary 2015 season with a small slam and a calendar Grand Slam between Wimbledon 2015 and Roland Garros 2016. Boris imparts that famous winner mentality that made him so formidable in his youth. And what's fascinating is seeing Boris rediscover his passion for tennis through this coaching role. He, who sometimes seemed bored after retirement, regains his taste for competition. We see him in Djokovic's box, just as intense as when he played. Becker then regains legitimacy in the world of tennis. He is respected for his skills rather than criticized for his mischief. 1996 is the year of the last fireworks. As mentioned, Boris Becker wins the Australian Open for the second time, and everyone thinks he will come back stronger. But in reality, this is the beginning of the end. This will be his 6th and last Grand Slam. After that, little to nothing. Boris continues to play until 99, but it's a downward spiral. Early losses stack up, motivation fades. Modern tennis becomes too fast, too physical for him. So in 99, Boris officially retires. 31, he thinks he has his whole life ahead of him. He thinks that, with his fortune estimated at over $50 million, he is comfortable. But not so much. Boris dives into business with the same fervor he had on the court. But the problem is that business is not like tennis. It requires patience, thoughtfulness, and caution, all things Boris has never been. He invests in London restaurants that later go bankrupt, launches into dubious real estate projects, trusts financial advisors who rip him off, and within a few years, his fortune melts away like snow in the sun. But that's not all. His private life also becomes a nightmare. His divorce in 2001 costs him a fortune, alimony, division of assets. Boris discovers that divorcing when you're rich can quickly ruin you. Then there's the 1999 scandal that shook Germany. Becker admits to having had a one-night stand with a Russian waitress in a closet at Nobu restaurant in London. Result: an illegitimate child and a new paternity lawsuit costing him millions. At this point, the German media goes wild. The national hero becomes the laughingstock of the country. As a result, endorsement contracts dwindle one by one. Puma, Ed, all these historical sponsors distance themselves. But the worst part is that Boris doesn't understand what's happening to him. Used to winning since he was 17, he refuses to accept failure. So he bets everything on a comeback. He invests even more, borrows, takes crazy risks, buys shares in nightclubs, sets up consulting firms, and even dives into reality TV, but none of it works. Each new project plunges him deeper into debt. His loved ones try to reason with him, but Boris doesn't listen to anyone. He has always been solitary on the court, and he remains solitary in business. Fatal mistake. By 2002, his creditors begin knocking at his door because Boris owes money everywhere. To banks, the German tax authorities, his ex-wives, his advisors. The downward spiral is set in motion. As a result, Becker sells his possessions one by one. His villa in Monaco, his car collection, and even his trophies. Imagine that the one who has won 6 Grand Slams is forced to sell his cups to pay off his debts. But despite all this, Boris remains hopeful. He still thinks he can get out of it, but he doesn't realize that the worst is yet to come. Just when we thought Boris had hit rock bottom, 2017 arrives like a blow. The one who won tens of millions in his career must declare personal bankruptcy. That's it, Boris Becker, a 6-time Grand Slam winner, is officially ruined. It's a media tsunami. How did the hero of a generation end up here? 50 million, enough to buy a castle and live like a king until the end of days. But Boris, even at the bottom of the pit, cannot resist playing with fire. Instead of cooperating honestly with the British authorities managing his bankruptcy, he commits the irreparable. When the British authorities ask him to declare all his assets, he lies. He hides bank accounts, conceals properties, and fails to mention investments. And worse, he continues to live as if he were rich, first-class travel, luxury hotels, Michelin-starred restaurants. All with money he is supposed to repay to his creditors. But the investigators are not fooled. They discover he has hidden more than 2.5 million in accounts abroad. They also find out he has quietly sold assets to avoid them being seized. But that's not all. Boris also has to answer to the German tax authorities for years of unpaid taxes, dubious tax arrangements, and whimsical declarations. The bill is hefty, several million euros in arrears. And once again, Boris plays with fire. Instead of regularizing his situation, he continues to lie, evade, and promise payments he will never make. An attitude that will cost him dearly. And yes, on April 29, 2022, will cost him dearly. And yes, Boris Becker was sentenced by a London court to 2.5 years in prison for asset concealment and fraud during his bankruptcy proceedings. Imagine the scene. The man who wrote a page in the history of global sports, the prodigy who made Wimbledon vibrate, found himself handcuffed and taken to a prison cell. The man who electrified Wimbledon ended up in Wandsworth, one of the toughest prisons in England. Naturally, the news and promise payments he will never make. An attitude that will cost him dearly. And yes, on April 29, 2022, no one believed it, not even him. Until the very end, he thought he would escape with a fine or some community service. Ultimately, Boris spent 8 months behind bars before being released in December 2022. Upon his release, he was shattered. The man who believed he was invincible discovered the harsh reality of British prison life. In his first interviews after his release, Boris confessed, "I lost everything. My reputation, my freedom, my dignity. I'm 55 years old and I have to start over." He also recounted the hell of prison life. Daily humiliations, constant fear, and isolation. Used to presidential suites, he found himself in a 3-meter cell with common criminals. Today, Boris Becker is trying to rebuild his life. He consults occasionally for networks and is writing his memoirs. However, he is no longer the man he once was, as his story is one of a dramatic fall. He showed us that from national hero to inmate, the transition can be swift. Boris crossed that line out of pride, blindness, and an inability to accept his mistakes. His story serves as a lesson for us all. Success can go to your head, but reality always catches up with you. Becker knows this all too well. So, let me know in the comments what you think about this incredible story. Personally, I'm both surprised by the dramatic trajectory of his life and think it perfectly illustrates the lack of financial education for elite athletes. And for all of us, really. When money comes in all at once, no one is prepared to manage it. You either need to be very mentally strong to avoid cracking under pressure, or you need to be completely detached from material things like mansions, jets, and cars, or you need to be well surrounded by well-intentioned people. Clearly, Becker had none of that. Yet, he remains a major figure in tennis and a legend who marked his time. If you want to discover the story of another legend who also had a tragic fate, be sure to check out this video about Monica Seles.